Jay. I'm back in for another one. And today I have with me.
It's Drew here again.
It feels like
At
just
some
yesterday.
point you gotta let me go home. Yeah. Is it Drew or is it the clone version of Drew? We'll find out.
Like the Hotel California, once you enter, you can never leave.
Yeah. The Eagles.
The Eagles. Yeah. Hey man, okay. So even before just seeing the trailer, I knew, we didn't discuss it beforehand, that we were going to have a conversation about this movie.
Yes.
Of course, we're talking about They Cloned Tyrone. And what's crazy is intriguing as the trailer and the concept is, it's crazy that we're almost experiencing the real thing on the other side in real life. Because we have issues like with, well, not issues, but the whole thing with Jamie Foxx and him being like, almost not taken away from John Boyega, but Jamie Foxx, he's an icon, right? A modern icon. And for that big piece to be in a situation where, he falls ill, all of a sudden he disappears for a long time. We don't really hear anything. We're hearing more from everybody but him. Actually, the other day, he recently, I think it was on the same day that this was released, he made a statement about his situation and where he's at with it. And he gave a pretty good answer that you could take or not take.
Yeah, without giving an answer. Yeah.
Right. But the timing was very interesting. And so it almost leads into this conspiracy, because like when you don't have any information coming in, guess what? The mind makes up the information for you. It connects dots for you. It'll fill in the blanks for you. So it's almost you're making it a small fire into a wildfire by, not giving it oxygen, but instead, in a way, you're giving it gasoline. And so it's all these things coming out that we don't have to even get into. But as far as his condition, how he got there, what happened to him, and then the day that it's time for a movie about clones get released, he comes out talking about, I'm okay. Yeah. I'm all right. I'm okay.
And made the joke. And some people say I was cloned. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I do think that Jamie Foxx, being the seasoned veteran that he is, wanted to make sure that this film got some extra attention.
Yeah.
And I believe that was perfect, because we were all concerned about him.
Yeah.
And I do know, and I'm not saying he faked anything. I think he legit, you could tell from his face that he may have had a stroke or something. You could see where his face is just different now, which is what happens when you get sick. My father had a massive stroke a year ago, like July 12th, last year.
Oh, wow.
And he did not recover well. So like I can't communicate with him anymore or anything like that. But his body, his face physically changed. And so seeing him for the first time after the stroke, it was making an adjustment, because you could see it's him, but there was something kind of different. It was like his face was a little bit more elongated. Like it was just, like it was just a little bit different. And this happens when people get sick. I've seen this, and so I don't know what happened with him. I'm glad that he's better, but I do believe that he played it up, and he was like, yeah, I'm gonna make this announcement, because the casual people who wouldn't have watched it and would have been like, that looks stupid. Because you know how we are. If it ain't just a straight-laced delivery, we can reject something. His core audience, when I say we, and it's like, and so I think seeing him made people say, let me go ahead and give this movie a try. And for the first time today, and we'll get into this later, dude, I've actually ran across a few message boards that are wild, that are not liking this movie.
Really? They had me
crazy.
At pimp,
we'll talk about
prostitute, and pusher, and the word clone. It had me. it had me from the title alone. I'm like, you had me with that, synopsis alone. I'm like, just dip in. It's like a conspiracy theorist, wet dream. Like, let's have at it. That's interesting.
Yeah, no, it's an excellent film. It's an excellent film. I honestly feel like, and once again, I hate to always keep saying, and we'll talk about this more later, but like, and I know we'll talk more about this. I know you've prepped this out well, but it's like, I feel like had consumed Boots Riley in the last couple of years, a couple of projects, that I was ready for this project. Like I'm ready to see, and not just Boots Riley, but Donald Glover and all the other people that that me and you talk about. We've been consuming some Black sci-fi and some quality Black films. So it was like, I was ready for this to be good.
Right.
Because this could have been really bad.
Right.
Like, do you remember the last Jamie Foxx film that was on Netflix?
Yes. And I remember it because you asked me to remember it. For a quick second, I had to go like roll the deck. Now I know them and I've seen them, so I know the one where he's I can't remember the name, but the vampire one was Snoop Dogg, and then you had the one Project Power. So both genres I really love, but the contribution to
Project
those
Power
genres,
was good.
I didn't, I thought was interesting, but still, it wasn't on the level that I kind of go back and rewatch them. So unlike this one,
Project Power. Not to get too far off, but like, because that was Dominique Fishback with him, right?
Yes, it was.
Like that one was just a mediocre story, but it was a good film for us to whet our appetite for him in that role, in a sci-fi type role like that.
And also that leans into how a small movie that's sci-fi with mutant powers and Black folks can be done. This is like, like the Project Greenlight movie. That's a good example of that exact kind of situation and how it could be kind of flushed out and for it to feel a little bit bigger and stuff. Not saying that Miko had the same resources, but that's an example of a smaller size sci-fi power-based kind of movie done on a small budget.
And it was a perfect example of what she had to be understanding. Like when you get notes like that, that's what you're up against. You're up against people who help produce or who have seen films like that made, and they're like, expand the world, because that's what Project Power did. It did an excellent job of explaining the relationship between the dynamics between people, between the characters, and it was a very expanded world. It was just a very predictable story. That's what I mean by when I say it was like a marginal, like in between kind of story. It was just like, I knew how it was going to, pan out. But with Tyrone, I knew what they were saying. I was aware of the themes, but I was on it. Like I was down for the full ride because it could have ended any kind of way.
Yes, it could have.
So I don't want to step over. I'm gonna follow your lead on it because I'm excited about us to have this conversation.
Yeah, and one more thing about that kind of stuff is like with Jordan Peele as well, and then also Tim Story's latest movie, The Blackening. Like I love this Black sci-fi leaning into the things that get us as a people, as a culture, and kind of lean into those things. And I love like the fact that it's so much of it kind of coming out in quality and different visions and directions and stuff. I think it kind of decodes the next movie that's coming out, because sometimes stuff is rejected because we don't have the breakdown for the keys, like this means this means that, or even the lingo. It could be heady if you don't really know the lingo. So all those other movies that kind of take the hit for the future ones is a beautiful thing, because those other ones, even though they may not be better, if the timing is right and you have the words and the visuals and stuff decoded, it's easier to digest than the first time. Even though it could be a great movie, if you don't know the keys to what things mean and the visual stuff, it's kind of like foreign language, and you kind of fighting trying to love it, but you don't understand it. And so, like I said, it could be a movie that comes down the line that's like it, and it may not be as good, but it will be more digested and accepted because somebody wrote out the map so people can journey and accept what's being presented. And it's just a beautiful thing, beautiful time for that.
Yeah, that's good. Well said.
All right, so let me do a little synopsis. Okay, so the series of eerie events trust an unlikely trio unto the trial of a nefarious government conspiracy in a pulpy mystery caper. Yeah, that kind of sums it up. This is directed by first-time director Joel Taylor. Also co-written with him and this guy named Tony Rittenmeyer. Stars John Boyega, Jamie Foxx, of course, and Teyonah Parris. This is a powerful, well-realized movie coming from a first-time director, even though he's written on stuff like, I think he wrote on Creed 2 and some other movies. So he's been doing some behind-the-scenes stuff and some stuff with writing. But this is his first directing a movie. In a way, I think that even though I really love this movie and I thought it would be great to see in the theater, I think it benefited from being presented on Netflix, because I think that even though for folks like us, we appreciate it and we see like the title and we know, okay, from the title alone or trailer alone, you got me. For others, it could be a little weird and you don't know exactly what it's going to be, and you don't have enough confirmation to feel comfortable for paying that kind of money to sit in the theater, when it could go either way. And so with it being on Netflix, you could just push the button and find out. So this is a movie that could have in the past been a cult classic and people didn't realize it was even out until years later, when it's on some other kind of thing like Netflix, or buy the Blu-ray, or you see something, or you see somebody watching it, or they say, hey, check this out. Everybody at the same time, folks that are adventurous with movies, folks that are prudish about movies, could click that same button, same day, same time. It got Jamie Foxx in it. Let me check him out. It got John Boyega. Oh, it got the chick from the one of the Marvels, and she's done stuff on WandaVision. Let's click the button on her. You may not even know their names, but you know their faces. They're out there enough, and you could just push that button on Netflix, watch it now, and take a chance. I know for me, for sure, I was pleasantly surprised, because you never know what you're going to get when you have things going directly to a streaming source. Usually that's blockbusters like B movie aisle, are the new streaming. So the stuff that might not make it with the big boys in the big league sometimes goes straight to these streaming networks and stuff. So I think it's always a nice surprise when you see it and you be like, man, I would have paid to see this in the theater. So I thought that this was definitely one of those. And like I said, I think this would have been a cult classic in the past, and for the reason of the presentation of it and being on Netflix, I think that it's going to get the eyes that it probably wouldn't have gotten if it was just a theatrical release and you had to wait for it to come out later on and remember that you wanted to even see it. So I think this kind of tied in very well.
I hope so. I really do. I know that Netflix is the leading streaming platform. I do also understand that, like, to your point, it needed to be in theaters just for opportunity. Just because at the end of the day, Netflix is still a limited platform, where movie theaters everyone can go to, and there's a lot of people who just don't stream. And I would love to see that in the future, that like, could this be a movie that trickles down? Like, I fell in love with movies through my local, like, channel 62 in Kansas City would play like movies on Saturday nights. Mm-hmm. And these were movies that had been released 5 years before, 2-3 years before. And it was just now making it to TV. And I was excited when it came on TV. Like, I remember watching Coming to America on CBS when it came on, and was so excited. Had only really seen, like, my first time watching Color Purple was us watching it when it came on TV and then recording it, on tape. And like, but I guess my point that I'm getting at is, it's like, I that's the downside. Like, I really do wish that this movie would grow, because I do love what they're doing. And maybe it will. Maybe one day Netflix is going to trickle out and have like the free channel, the free version of their channel, or what they do. You never know. I don't know.
Yeah. In the past,
maybe it's not even an audience for that anymore.
Right. But I saw them do in the past, and I also saw some of their stuff in the past, where they would have a movie that was coming out on Netflix like a week before they're having it in the theater for a week. And so I was kind of surprised that they didn't do that with this one. I think this would have been a good one to try that with, especially with stuff like The Blackening just coming out and things like that. Why not?
I think that they didn't because of the strike, possibly, that they knew maybe they wouldn't have had any type of support with people promoting it, and because they just aren't supposed to promote it.
It's possible.
Yeah, that could be, but that might be just me giving, bad people the benefit.
Possibly. Okay, before we start getting into the weeds of this and the spoilers and all that kind of stuff, what was your overall thoughts of the movie, and what you think about it?
I do think that it was when I described this to my friends, I gave it a low A. I think there were some parts of it that was a little bit long. There were parts that I felt dragged out, that unfortunately for me um, took away from the overall quality of the film, but not enough to where it made me feel as though like, oh, this is a bad movie, but I was highly entertained. I felt like everything's necessary. If I put myself in the editor's shoes, I don't see myself possibly saying like everything that they gave us, I would want to keep too. So still a good movie. I just felt like it ran long in a couple of parts, like they made their point and it was just time to move on, but yeah, but other than that, great. I mean, like for me being a more, and I don't mean this in a facetious way, but like me being a more analytical thinker about things in life, I picked up on the themes fairly quickly.
Yeah.
And I do think I have to realize that they did certain things because not everyone was going to pick up on the themes right away.
Right.
And so that worked out perfectly. I mean, like, I think that was where I graded it a little bit less, but where other people were like, no, the themes came as a complete surprise. That movie was deep and it caught me by surprise. I was like, nah, it was deep from the get-go. And I don't want to say what scene made me say, oh, I know where we're going, because I don't want to get in, no spoilers at this point. But yeah, I'll mention it in a minute.
Okay. I felt the same way. I really enjoyed it. I loved it. I really enjoyed it. I think that some of my feelings about it was suppressed just because I was trying to just kind of digest it out as I was going along. It already kind of felt like it'd be kind of a dense kind of movie, especially watching the beginning of it. So it's just like, even the way it opened and stuff, it's like I need to kind of pay attention. So sometimes my emotional enjoyment factor doesn't kick in until like the second viewing or just thinking about what I saw, because I'm so busy just kind of taking it in, like, okay, and got this background stuff going, got this going. So I really enjoyed it. It was a long movie, but to me, it didn't really feel too long. Even though I know John Boyega is a great actor, to me, he really shined in this. It was very subdued kind of character he played. And even though he was and wasn't really a person of words, he really shined to me. And even though some of the acting of some of the other characters, it wasn't bad, but it seemed like it was more pronounced that they were acting or playing this role versus he seemed like he just kind of leaned into it. And if he didn't look familiar, I'd be like, he could just be any person. And I think that was the point of it. But he kind of disappeared into the role pretty cool. And I was very impressed by him, because when you think of him, you don't think of him as necessarily being that kind of an actor. I don't personally. I always kind of think of him being more like a Michael B. Jordan, and not knocking Michael B. Jordan, but he's always Michael B. Jordan, and you kind of get the same kind of range with him. And so when John Boyega kind of hits his left, I'm like, oh, he got that too. Oh, okay. And he does it. Oh, he got this too. And so he's one of the younger ones that I've seen that actually transform kind of like a Denzel. Even though I know he gets compared to him a lot, he kind of got that thing where he is still him, but it's so convincing that you almost don't even see him in it, even though you're going to see him.
Yeah.
And everybody doesn't have that. He's a young dude that's doing that now. So, and the same thing with Jonathan Majors, he's kind of the same thing. I would put them kind of in the same class of those kind of like, they're beyond the page kind of actors. And so it was just really cool to see him in something like this. Because I almost take for granted that I like all the stuff that he's in. I never think of him like that, because there's other people I think, oh, if they're in it, I'll watch it. But he's one of those kind of people for me, even though I don't consciously think that about him. But I'm always like, oh, like I'm surprised, like, like I like cake or something. Like, yeah, I know I like cake. He's always good. So he's one of those kind of people that I'm always kind of digging, but always kind of surprised when I take that bite. Would it be for everybody? I wouldn't recommend it to everybody, because I know it could be kind of on the different side. But I think, my age range and, and probably, and I don't know. I think if you're into the sci-fi kind of stuff, you're into conspiracy theory kind of stuff, that you have to be kind of open for this kind of a movie. So I wouldn't necessarily suggest it to everybody. But if you like conspiracy stuff, I think this is in that Jordan Peele, all that kind of stuff, and Donald Glover.
Would you suggest it to your wife, friend?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay.
Either you got the ones that's just like, no, I'm not watching it, and nothing in there for me, and you got the others that are like, let's go see what the folks are doing over here, and boop,
Do you think that you got some people that are waiting at the water cooler to talk to you about this?
Probably. And I know any answer I give, it won't be appreciated.
The idea that this movie is based off of the concept of a conspiracy theory that is sci-fi but your blackness has informed you that this is possible because, and then you start going back to, remember in the 90s when they said they was putting something in church's chicken to make black men sterile, and then you look up and it's like millennial black men are having like 40% less children than a generation before, and you're like, like, and those are all different things, but like we have dealt with, and it's not just Tuskegee, it is all of it.
It's the
like
whole thing.
We have dealt with all of it for so long that the concepts explored in this film are not exactly fi. It's science, but it ain't fiction.
And to borrow from this movie, it was said by someone that America is an experiment.
Yeah. That was a deep line. Yeah, deeper than surface level. Yeah.
Right.
It is.
Yeah. So no, I wouldn't necessarily recommend to everybody, but I think people would enjoy it. I think it's a fun watch. I think that it's worth giving a chance on, and I had fun with it, and I got a chance to rewatch it, and I still enjoyed it. And I got even more from it because, like I said, it was a lot to take in on the first viewing. So it's one of those kind of movies that you will check out for the nuances because it's a lot in there, and I really enjoyed it. Okay, so we're going to the part where Drew spoils all the good stuff and he gives the ending first.
So this nigga Tyrone was actually but nah. So the conspiracies that I just alluded to, in all seriousness, we just gave you the spoiler alert. So if you are still listening, that's on you. The conspiracies were that this government agency, or what would you say, government agency?
Yeah, the government.
Yeah.
Who else is the boys pulling the strings and the man and all the rest of it? Who else is it?
It actually took, has set up all these different controlled environments in ghettos and hoods, so to speak, and they are actually experimenting on Black people through content and through consumerism. So everything that we consume, and not only were they were also spying on people through phones. You saw where like they was writing down like notes, like crazy notes, like Deshaun said something. I forgot what it said on that scene, but it's like this concept that they're figuring a way to control us in order to get us to an ultimate end, which goes back to the beginning of how we got here. Right. How can they control us and monetize us and also transform us into what they want us to be? And we are taking the bait in so many different levels. It's a nuanced discussion, but that's what the film, to me, that's my interpretation, loosely with some spoilers in it without too many. What you got?
I agree with that. Yeah. I think that it plays with who's at fault, how much of the fault is yours, how much of the fault is the system, who takes accountability for the situation that they're in, who tries to be beyond that, but the fence is only so high that you can really climb and can't actually get out. It's even said by a character that even though they wanted more for themselves, even with their best efforts, even with their insight and intelligence and being able to do things, they still couldn't get from down the street from where they were born and raised. And that is a thing that many of us as a culture suffers from. I will say that this movie reminded me of The Wiz in a way, where you got these folks traveling to, looking for answers and wanting to be more than themselves. And it's one of those kind of things that they always think that answer is going to come from somewhere else. So they're always constantly wearing or being something that was given to them to be, even though that truly wasn't them. And until they wake up and understand that it can't be given to you from the outside and it's from within, that you'll always be kind of easing down that road leading to nowhere until you realize that, it starts with self. But not everything is going to be a mirror to jog you into understanding and seeing yourself. And so it takes different things for different folks. And also in this movie was touched on with even knowing that doesn't guarantee somebody's going to accept that accountability or accept that weight, accept that price for that ticket to pass into enlightenment. That's a high price. and it's a lot of responsibility that not everybody's ready for. So I think that, it reminded me of The Wiz in that way. And then also, to me, Jordan Peele would have made something like this, more like this than what Us was, or this is the other side of it. This is the prequel to Us. This is how all those people got underground who are copies of the folks that were on top. So to me, it kind of felt like it was in the same world possible. Like it was kind of touching on the same stuff, slightly different, but with a little finagling, it could kind of be in the same world with the same issue and the other side of the problem. Like them being created in Y, and then them escaping and getting out, and then doing what they do in the movie Us. So I thought it was very, very interesting. But I kind of, when this subject was touched on, when I was thinking about Us, Jordan Peele's movie, I was almost thinking it'd be more like this movie than Us actually turned out to be.
Yeah. And, I think the one thing that I can appreciate was the simplicity of the story of the main characters, the way you had to follow the characters. And we joke about it, but they kept it as simple as we've got a pimp, a prostitute, and a drug dealer. Mm-hmm. And these are the three people in Black society or in urban society that is dragging everything down. Because we see this even in like poor white culture too. So this is a part of this American social experiment that we live in, mm-hmm. that this is what is put in place almost across the classes. Of course, it's more stigmatized for poor Blacks and poor whites, mm-hmm. but you see the same thing in high class, so to speak, whether it's, you see the same pattern repeated. So the idea that they're cloning them, just to rinse and repeat, was this deeper message to me that I saw clearly, like right away. And one of the first things that I was able to see, it was like the fried chicken commercial. Before they went to the fried chicken place, the fried chicken commercial, I was like, oh, I know this is about to be a deeper message than just some adventure is about to pop off.
Right.
Because that fried chicken commercial was just too outlandish and too crazy, which is reflective of real life fried chicken commercials.
Yeah, it was very similar.
Yeah, in real life, Popeye's got people dancing and singing and doing all kind of crazy stuff, and we line up still for it.
Mm-hmm. Chicken sandwich, Popeye's chicken sandwich.
Yeah, the Boondocks called it so perfectly.
Right.
That everybody got sick after a chicken sandwich, that it scared me, because I was like, did Popeyes give us COVID? And I had to remember that the two did not but it was but no, I love when people talk about it. But the point I was originally making was that I love that this movie stayed on the surface level and addressed these issues using these tropes, like using these characters to address it. And it didn't go a step deeper and say anything about the system. There was like the only people who saved themselves were the clones themselves, or the people, and I think it spoke deeper to two of the characters being potentially clones as I saw it. There were one definitely like the pimp and the drug dealer, but the prostitute was still the real person, the way I interpret it.
Yeah, that's how I took it as well.
And I was like, that's a deeper statement for me, that it's like Black men, sometimes we rinse and repeat, but Black women, because of what we were talking about earlier, Black women bring something different to the space every time, and they ain't got a choice but to keep it real. And we ain't gonna get out unless we follow them.
That's interesting. I had a take on that as well. That's very interesting what you said. I thought it was interesting that this movie, okay, so it's almost saying like to take over or destroy or to compromise a hood or a culture is like, the liquor store, the hairdresser, and the church. And the movie is basically saying the pillars of the hood is a pimp, a pusher, a pastor, and a prostitute. Because the pastor, he's not like a main character, but he is included. He wasn't
Yeah.
one of the main characters going down the yellow brick road, but he was a big factor because people who were kind of running things and people look up to and have a flock of followers. They are the ones that are leading. The pimp is telling people what to do. The drug pushers lead, kind of narrating how he wants the block to be or who he has coming in. There's power protectors, same thing with the pastor. And so I thought it was kind of interesting. And then, the prostitute have her power, like almost like the power of the P, but got a power over, men as well. So and so it's interesting that they kind of pinpointed on those kind of things, and then went deeper with the alteration of the chicken and the grape drink and the hair products and stuff. It was just like, they really kind of, it was funny that it's almost kind of like this powerful people, this powerful culture or race could be taken down by these 3 or 4, pieces, not that they're all bad necessarily, but I'm just saying, like, that's what they decided that they needed to take down a whole culture, not the mayor, not the police officers. It wasn't the stuff that we have as being perceived power and perceived leaders and stuff. The president, if they didn't care about that, they cared about those 4 entities to sway the people, you know what I mean, or to even prep them to even be malleable for the bigger things that's coming up for them. Because even when the guy was like, the pastor was singing like, obey or be servant, he was just kind of singing to the, even that was just kind of like, or even in the club when it was kind of like, all these songs are saying obey, submit, if you're getting too riled up, calm down, you mad, put this stuff in your hair, and you're not thinking about how you're unsensible by paying so much for those Beyonce tickets. Oh, what am I worried about? I can't afford nothing. I'm spending money on getting my hair done, but not paying my mortgage and my kids, and they're getting the creamy crack in their hair, and they just like, I'm just tripping. It's in my head. So, all these things to offset the truth and reality of self, because we all come up for air one time or another, and then, we get pushed back underwater by outside sources to make sure we stay there. But sometimes we do come out from under the water and think like, this is madness. This can't be what's really going on. This can't be what this is mean. This can't be what society's turned into. If we have this many people who care and love, why are we still in this situation? If the politician's there and supposed to be looking out for us, why is this the situation? If the people are supposed to fix the streets and we pay our taxes to do that, how come the streets aren't right then? How come this stuff that has no answer for being wrong still wrong and it's fine? And then we get mad, we get upset. We can't see an answer. We can't see no way to resolve it. We don't know who to go to. We don't know the steps. Then we get pushed back underwater. And you just go ahead and pay that damn bill. Quit complaining. Pay that bill. Eat that food that they're messing with now. Pay that price that's too high and it's not reasonable. Take that crap from the boss that don't see you and you could do better, but you're not for sure. So just stay down. Stay down. Don't question. Stay down.
I think one of the things that speaks to the point that you're making that I really like is that we address that these issues were addressed. And the reason why I think it's important to address these type of issues in the way that a film like this does it, it brings me back to the concept of the way we have to communicate with one another as Black people. And I do think that this, keeping those 3 tropes or 4 tropes, how many different, characters in there in this particular way makes this movie appealing enough to greenlight, unfortunately. And then having that deeper message is so surface level that it's sort of like it's hiding in plain sight. So it's like, yeah, we can make a movie. Yeah, we'll let this movie, because it's a joke that, the white man's poisoning you, ha, ha, ha. But the truth of the matter is it's no different than, slaves, braiding directions in their hair or singing spirituals, telling people where to go. We learn to give each other warnings. And I think for people in positions of creativity and power to pack a message in there that says, hey, people, Black people, poor people, this is how we're going to activate. Because if you don't send the messages in society, in American society, in this experiment, what happens is if you send that message directly, they kill the messenger. Mm-hmm. And so we have a history of understanding it. We have to find covert ways to send the message, because Medgar Evers, like, Martin Luther King, like, Huey P. Newton, like, you got this whole list of people who, when they say it directly, will not last the night. So we got to figure a way to bring the message so that we can survive to morning. And I think films like this, for some people, they're like, oh, it wasn't that deep. Trust me, that movie should make you start thinking about, before you pull up to Popeyes or Churches. That movie should start making you think about The Perm. Right. It should make, and it's not that deep, but it is deep.
Right. And to your point of even saying that, it lends to the resolve of the movie, where something was underestimated and the thing that was used to be a thing to hold back and to disrupt got flipped. Like you could hurt yourself with that hammer. You could hit yourself in the foot with it, and you could also, hammer a nail. So that thing that you didn't know what it was and you were hurting yourself with, it could be flipped. It works both ways. You just got to have the insight and perspective to know other things that could be used with that tool that you've been given.
It's a great movie in that regard. You told me something about the movie that really, when we were talking about Project Greenlight, one of the reasons why this movie was good was because obviously the cast, the crew, everyone involved in the movie helped make it a great movie, right?
Right.
You were telling me that the director is a first-time director,
right?
Which blew my mind, because it's like, this really shows, like, this movie should be, and I'm seeing this on trend, like this trending, that people are saying we need to celebrate this movie and the people behind the movie the way we celebrate Jordan Peele.
Yes.
And why do you think that maybe it won't get celebrated? Is it because it didn't have a theatrical release, or what?
To be honest, I didn't really I don't really check out message boards and stuff like that. Only thing I've really heard about this is like, folks, some people's reviews and stuff, and it seemed like for the most part they were pretty positive. But also, I might be seeing folks who kind of see things like the way I see it. So me hearing that from them might not be vast enough to, encompass like the whole big picture. But from what I've seen, it seems like people are really digging the film. But I think that people probably wouldn't fool with it because maybe they think it's going to be a typical, hood movie. It could be people who think that, the quote unquote conspiracy is too much, and they don't want to sit there and watch that kind of thing. Some people are just afraid in general of sci-fi stuff because it's disturbing, the concept. Some people don't want their boat rocked in that way. Sometimes you just don't want it in your head, and I'm gonna have this conflict that I gotta sit with. It's almost that ignorance is bliss thing, and I think more people than not, we live like that. And I think that anything that, because even though it seems kind of like, oh, simple or whatever, sometimes you could, like with dogs and stuff, they could kind of smell the medicine that you hide in the meat. Like, I would go in for that, but I know it's some medicine in there. I don't want that medicine because I gotta be accountable. I'm gonna have to do something with this new insight. And I think that, people probably could see it and smell it and be like, I don't want that in my head, because then what do I do with that?
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry for the long answer.
I definitely agree. No, well spoken. No, that was the right. Yeah.
I will say this, for me, being a person who watch a lot of movies and stuff, I would have really enjoyed not knowing, even though what is called and everything in the trailer, pulled me in. I wish it would have been played as if this movie was more like a Groundhog Day kind of movie, and the guy just keeps waking up and dying and keep waking up, and then you find out the twist thing. I think that would have been kind of more palatable because people know Groundhog Day and feel more comfortable. And then you find out the twist, like, oh, they're doing this too. That's what Jordan Peele would have did. He would have left that little twist at the end, later, or you would have found out as watching, versus just giving it all up in the beginning, which I was kind of surprised they did. But like I said, I think they would have got more with the Groundhog Day and the hood kind of thing, which would have made for a good movie. And then also a nice, like I said, a nice, landing strip for the coming home to, hey, they're cloning black folks. So, even with the opening of it, did you have something you wanted to say?
No. I agree but then I don't. But it
Oh,
doesn't
I want to hear
matter
it.
because
No, no, it does matter.
you
I would
know,
like to hear
I
it.
was just saying like I like when someone does something different
Uh-huh.
because like you're right, the Groundhog's Day thing is still you repeat things because they're brilliant. Imitation is flattery, you know. So it's not that there's anything wrong with that. I just think we would have it would have I like the idea of just hiding in plain sight sometime and just being just stupid out there. You know what I'm saying? But I like the idea that like they should have, if that I was thinking in my mind, should they have like gone that way? It would have been fun. It would
Well,
have been fun. I think they wouldn't have lost either way.
no, no, I'm not saying the whole movie should have been that. I'm saying it should have been advertised
Yeah.
as like a Groundhog Day. No, the movie's the same as it is.
Oh, movie stays the same. So okay,
The
all
movie
right.
stays the
Because
same.
in
I'm
my
talking
head,
about
I'm like,
I'm talking about the
yeah,
advertising in the trailer,
perfect.
so people feel comfortable getting in, and then
Yeah,
surprise. Like, so no, keep the movie exactly the way it is, because, and I'm probably a
yeah.
little bit selfish, but me knowing that the clone is in the name, I'm always looking through each door, figuring out the clone, who it is and why, and all this other kind of stuff.
Did you watch for the first 15, 20 minutes as they're introducing the world that you were like, where's Tyrone?
Yeah,
Where's Tyrone? Like, were you looking
yeah,
for Tyrone to be
yeah.
cloned? I thought Tyrone was gonna introduce
Yeah,
himself soon.
yeah. And so even with that, I was for like you said, up until like 15, 20 minutes, I was worried about and wondering where Tyrone was. I figured he just wasn't in it. I was like, oh, they just being funny, and Tyrone's just a generic black guy name and whatever, versus it being an actual person. I thought that was interesting. But yeah, but I was just talking about the trailer being presented as a Groundhog Day kind of a movie, but then you find out what it really is. So no, I love the movie the way it is. I just wanted the advertisement, because I was sitting there waiting for the clone stuff to show up, versus if I was just watching it the way it was and I didn't know what was going on with the movie, I'd have been thinking, oh, it's like Groundhog Day, right? Until it wasn't, and you'd be like, oh, this happened and now he got to investigate this and this is what it really was. I think it'd have been a cool flip for somebody who's always trying to read the room to sit there and enjoy it. And then also for people who know the concept and understand, and also is comfortable with the concept of, because like clone, if you're a sci-fi head, it's like you clone since Blade Runner and stuff like that. And still one of those kind of things that's kind of, when you hear clone, I don't think everybody reacts to it the same way. Like, ooh, that's going to be cool. Like, so trailer to give it like the movie's gonna be more of a Groundhog Day, to be like, oh, let me click it. I'm familiar with the concept of Groundhog Day. Let me see how this guy keeps dying. Let me see how this works. And then surprise, this is what that really is. And it goes deeper, deeper, deeper. But it did what it did. But I thought that it could have got in. I think even more people probably would press the button thinking it was going to be the hood version of Groundhog Day. But even like you said, even from the beginning, when it starts off in front of a liquor store, and you got these guys talking, and the guys got dreads and stuff, and the dreads are braided back, so you figure like it's modern time, right? And so this movie is constantly shifting between times and stuff, and so you can't get any kind of grounding, and you're kind of grasping that everything is being said. And some of the first thing they're even talking about Michael Jackson and Tupac being found. And it's like, so if Michael Jackson's around, he's at the Piggly Wiggly or he's at the Dollar Tree, how come they don't know it's Mike? Because he's black now. And that's what they're starting with, right? And who's the most, like, besides Elvis in our black culture, who's the most cloned or never died and still walking around? MJ and Tupac. Mainly Tupac. But I'm just saying, it's just interesting because MJ kind of...
People want to find Tupac.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And with MJ, even though I think he's kind of brought in the very beginning like that, because they kind of used MJ throughout the movie, with be it his music or even suggesting the reason why he's different now and all this other kind of stuff. It kind of lends into the bigger, conspiracy about possibly what went down with Mike. Because certain people think like he's totally a different person. Like he got actually swapped out for a white person. As far fetched as that is. But it was just very interesting. But like I said, you got that stuff going on, so you can't tell what time it is. It's shot almost like a 70s film. Even the license plate doesn't even tell you what city or state it's in or anything like that, So they got flip phones and, listen to old 70s music, dressed like old school pimps and stuff like that. But yet and still, they're talking about investing in blockchain and Bitcoins. And, it was even referred to like one dude got 50 cent. And we know if you get 50 cent, you know what that means. You know what happens with 50 cent, and there's also a mention of, talking about you ain't Obama and you ain't Michelle, so it just keeps kind of expanding the possibility of the time span that we're dealing with. And I think it's a reason for that as well that we could talk about later. But I think it's a reason why they kind of kept the ground constantly shifting all at once like that, because that's a lot to have layered, but it was all their reality.
No, I agree. I think that I definitely feel that the way that the world that they set us up in, it felt like it was modern times. But I don't know if you've ever experienced this for yourself, where sometimes you can go back to the country, or if you go visit, like for me, if I go visit my my people who live like in Arkansas or Louisiana or something like that, they still are aware of everything.
Right.
But you still got people pulling up in old schools with gold teeth.
Right.
But then they talking about blockchain. You know what I'm saying? Like, so
Right.
sort of like that is the feel of the Midwest. That's the feel of like Black people in country little towns. So if they were to tell me that that was Gary, Indiana, I would be like, that feels like Gary.
Right.
You know, like, because I didn't see any modern cars outside of like the Black SUVs.
Right.
But on the same token, it's like, yeah, I kind of remember that that's what life was like. Even in Tulsa, in certain neighborhoods you go into, and it was like, it's a little bit of mix of all these different generations. You know, like it's not just, and then you saw some of those tropes in real life there. Like you saw some of those characters. So yeah, man, I definitely see it. Like I see that the world that they painted was perfect in that regard. And credit to Jamie Foxx with what he did with the character to not make it too clownish, but also didn't take it too serious.
Yes. And
like,
yeah. Also, the Yo-Yo character I felt was kind of doing it on that same kind of line, also where it could be on the line of being too much, but it wasn't distracting. But it did stand out because of how John Boyega was playing Fontaine. That's the only thing that made me notice that they were a little bit brighter, a little bit bigger in their performances, because he played his so subtly, and that's fine. It lent to the characters, I'm sure, but yeah, I saw that too.
He's adjacent to, like, I think about my older brother when he was hustling, and I think about a lot of the hustlers who were leaders, like the ones who was block cat, like people really running the block. They typically are very cool like that. It's usually, maybe, and I hate to say it, like it's television or something, but to be honest with you, The Wire really did depict the way the dope game was around the US for a while. Like you do have partnerships with the really quiet, collective guy who's partnered up with a guy who's willing to kick in the house. Like, so in real life, I've seen a lot of really calm drug dealers and people who kind of just walked into the way John. So it feels like he studied the character, and played it just as cool and played it right, just like he was supposed to. Where with the Jamie Foxx character, like that's a fictitious kind of character from the get-go, because traffickers or pimps, however you want to put it, they don't really play those roles anymore. So he played what a real modern hustler, like, or what a real gangster is like. And the other two were just kind of depictions of what, so to speak, pimps and hoes, so to speak, used to be. So theirs felt more hammed up.
A time feeling too, like they're both existing in the same spot kind of thing. And it's almost like the whole movie is kind of like everything is kind of modern stuff, but even the way it's shot is flickering like an old 70s movie. It's all contrasting each other. Nothing is lining up. One thing's on this floor, the other one's on the 5th floor, but they're exactly on top of each other, but there's several floors in between them, and everything's kind of layered in that way where it technically shouldn't fit, but it does.
Well, at some point, these individuals got cloned where they were at. In the case of Fontaine and was it Slim, so these two characters are really have arrested development. When they're killed and then brought back to life, no matter what the circumstance is, they're the same as when they got captured. They're not bred or made to evolve. So it was
Or
surprising. Oh, go ahead.
or as we find out later on that you leave with a conditioning before you leave.
Yeah.
Because some certain things are in question.
Yeah.
Like, was that even that person to me? Was I even this? Did I even win this competition? Was I even
Right.
so
Right.
you got the director's notes that may not even be yours.
Yeah.
Right?
And it don't even line up or make sense. Yeah. Like he's dressed like a 70s pimp, but he got 1995 pimp of the year. It's like,
But when other people write your story, as you told me yesterday, the problem with the movie was the fact that somebody who didn't look like the person wrote the story. They may not write it right.
Yeah. And that's the whole point, is that like these were, and that's why you keep using that word trope to some extent. Like it's like these characters are white America's depiction of Black Americans.
Yes.
So either you're a pimp, a gangster, a preacher, or you're a prostitute. Yes. And the sad part about that is the woman stays in prostitute position.
Yes.
And when you discredit what is the backbone of a community and keep them into this one role, then it's like, oh, the whole community it can be viewed to be hoarded out. Like the whole community is to be used, and she's only going to produce another pimp, and she's only going to produce a gangster. And it's like, and when it's a sad reality that it's like at some point, not only is it on the responsibility of us to come from out of the shadows of what they think and not play the roles that they're asking us to play.
Right.
But the sadder reality, which is somewhat none of our business, or, in the sense that they're going to have to come, people who view us that way are going to have to come to a sad reckoning when they recognize that we're more than that. And but that's on them whenever they come to that. But it's like, that's going to be a day, for them to have to realize that.
But even more so of them realizing that when we realize that.
Right.
That's
yeah.
That, it would be a beautiful day. It would be a beautiful day. Yeah. So, it's like the movie starts off like day in the life of a drug dealer, and you kind of going through his normal routine, going to a liquor store, had a little scratcher for hope. You might win $1 million, might change your life, right? It's behind that scratcher that you lose every time you play. He works out, make sure his body is good to destroy the streets in which he drives on and has his thumb on, so you got to be in good shape. And he's going around getting his money that's owed, the money that he's making off the lives and the backs of his own community. So he's making sure he's in good shape. People don't even be in good shape for their own families, but when it comes to, taking over your block and making sure you have your thumb on the necks of the people, then you got to be in good shape for that. And I just wish that, more people took that same kind of effort and consciousness to other things that they're doing that they got to be in charge of or responsible for. And so, in that dealing, he comes across Jamie Foxx to go get his money because this pimp hadn't paid him. And I thought it was just so funny when the whole thing came up, was like, he was talking about the drugs. The drugs ain't, on point like they're supposed to be. That, it ain't right. Can we work out something? And he was like, well, you could give them back. So he didn't have the drugs to even give back. So that wasn't even an option. So I thought that was kind of funny, because I wouldn't have thought he would have said that, but that was the smartest thing he could have said. So it's just kind of like, whatever excuse you're trying to make, the issue is you don't have the product and you don't have my money. And that's what that is. And so because of an encounter that he had earlier in the day, like a thing that kind of happened with Tupac, encounter earlier in that day, and it seems to come back in the evening to get retribution. And he is, taken out, basically, trying to leave the hotel with the money. And because of the title, I know this isn't the case, but he wakes up. Possible Groundhog Day situation. Could have been a nightmare we've been watching for the first 20 minutes that wasn't real, and we're realizing, hey, he slept through. That was a dream. Ain't no way he could get shot, and that doesn't make any sense. Then he goes through, do the same old conditioning, same old things he does again. Liquor store, what's up to Frog? Hey man, that's a local wino that sits out front that got that knowledge and always have the answer, but we don't expect it to come from that place, so therefore we ignore it and we just blow it off.
Yeah. I thought one of the things I loved about the Wino character having insight
Mm-hmm.
was his lack of access as a consumer. So he's not as foggy. He's not in the club hearing the music. He's not going to the church because he's ostracized because he's the guy who drinks out there. So the only thing is he's getting the leftover pour out from the 40. But other than that, he's not in the cycle. So he's not getting his hair permed or, eating the chicken all the time. Like he's just getting the scraps of the community. And so that actually gave him more insight and more wisdom.
That's great.
And so when you build a character, like when you talk about character building, the idea of keeping this person on out, that's the reality of our community. You sit down, if you ever go visit a homeless shelter and you sit down with some of these people, they got the wisdom because a lot of them have the experience. Like some of these people were doctors and lawyers and lost it all. And they can tell you, look like you're about to start losing. And they know. And it might be worth you listening to people who know and have life experience, but also who are watching and they're invisible neighbors.
Right.
So no one cares. Like when I remember I had a break-in in my business here and no one in the building knew, but the people who lived outside was like, yeah, I saw someone in a black shirt and blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm saying? Like, and they'll give you information because they know, because this is their community and they're in it all the time. They don't have the right, or they don't have the ability, I should say, to close the door and pretend like, man, they crazy. No, he's got to see it all. So he can point you in this direction. He literally sees the enemy infiltrating the neighborhood. And if you don't make him invisible, if you don't step over that invisible neighbor, if you acknowledge him, it give you wisdom. So I love the way that they used that, because that also speaks to how we even treat our elders in the community, because they got wisdom.
Right.
And we just be like, nah, they invisible. That, So let me ask you about this character. And I'm sorry if I don't mean to jump over.
No, go for it.
I thought the idea of the mom just like I visualized the mom just being laid up in the room, not wanting to do nothing. And to think that this mom only had so many responses to this clone was programmed a particular way. So it knows and thinks it has a mother, but you know what I'm saying? Like, so he's making the sandwich. He's doing all these different things. And it's like, they had to put this shadowy mother figure there to give him motivation, I guess, to even be doing what he's doing. But when he busted open that door, I knew there was no one on the other side, but it still felt heartbreaking.
Yes.
And because it was like, that was him, like us really coming to terms with this thing has no humanity to them. Like they didn't even manufacture a mother. It was just a speaker box with a recording, not even a live person responding. Now, once again, we can go deep, and I could be like the absentee mom who has to work 3-4 different jobs, and how latchkey kids kind of can.
Yes. To be honest, for certain situations, the sad truth in our reality and in their reality is that that's pretty much probably what a lot of kids get. You're passing your parents in the night, where they're so busy or so tired and checked out that they don't really have much to offer but a response. We live in a society now and a culture where, you can have your whole family and everybody's in a separate room watching a separate show and all at the same time. And you just kind of see everybody in passing, or somebody trying to go to the bathroom at the same time. Everybody needs to go to the bathroom at the same time. So that, and for whatever reason, somebody could be working all the time or whatever. I will admit, when I saw that, it kind of broke my heart because I knew the truth of it. I know that I personally feel like that mom that was behind the door. As much as I try to do for my family and try to be there for my family, I felt guilty because I know sometimes I am a voice behind the door when somebody would be like, are you okay in there? And I do a lot of stuff with my family and I try to, balance it out. But sometimes you need your time for you as well. Or sometimes you don't have it to give. So it kind of made me think of myself and like, man, I don't think I'm the worst, but it's just kind of like, it did be like, there's some truth to that. And I don't want to be that to my family. especially as much as I try to be there, because sometimes you could be there and still be just that voice that has those canned answers, versus like getting up and be like, or trying to find out what the real question is, because sometimes kids don't have the right question to ask, so they'll never get the right answer. And to know that, but don't want to ask more questions because it's going to make you have to correspond more. I thought it was very powerful. I took it personal in a good way, where I took something from it, but it did kind of like, man, yes, that's a thing. And that kid, he's used to getting that, and that's all it took. And that's the sad part, is because that was enough. And it really wasn't. And he didn't know how to demand for more. He didn't know that it wasn't enough. It was just what he was conditioned to be fine with. And me as an outside viewer, it was definitely not enough. And it was sad that it was enough for him and he could go on with his day after just getting that one little encounter with a voice that he assumes to be his mom, to proceed with the rest of his day. That might be one of the factors why he didn't leave the area, because, his brother's gone, but maybe his mom is there. Maybe he drug deals to make money to pay for the house that his mom is maybe taking care of his mom. She's an anchor some kind of way, possibly.
Yeah. And I think it was important as they began to reveal parts of the plot, and they revealed the original clone, like the original person that he cloned himself and who everyone is or whatever. His name wasn't Tyrone.
No, still no Tyrone.
But I thought that was an interesting thing to say, like, hey, I gave you that trauma. Like, I let you know that my brother's dead.
Right.
But please be mistaken. I didn't give you the whole, like, how it played out. I didn't give you all those memories. And that was, like, that's an interesting thing, because I, as a person who navigates through some of these spaces where people are curious and they ask about the Black experience, they don't want that. But what they do want is like, hey, Andrew, you've seen someone get shot in a drive-by, and it's like, what? Like, they want to hear that I've had the trauma. They want to hear these things, but the gory details, or even the detail of overcoming it, isn't there. They don't, that part's not wanted. So sometimes our lives is about like passing on trauma porn, or to people, and we get used to that concept of letting people know things. And so for him to pass on this one particular trauma for no real benefit other than, like, really no benefit, but I guess it was a motivating factor that gave the clone some humanity or something. I don't know, but I thought that was interesting.
I think all those pieces are on purpose. I think their brother was there to kind of break them of hope, because when you lose somebody that's younger than you or close to you like that, it does shake you as far as your livelihood. I know when I lost my younger brother, it just kind of made me not see my future. It kept me small. It kept me not want to get connected. It made me think like, well, if it's out of order, grandma didn't die first and dad died first, and then it's this pecking order, right? And it kind of dealt from the bottom of the deck. It's kind of like, then what's reality? Then I could leave. I could go too. Age is not a factor of life, right? It's no guarantee. So it could be me too. So that's how I saw it, but maybe because of my own trauma. But I saw that as being the thing to kind of break him in a way. And then you have a little grounding with the mom, but not enough to empower. No, baby, you got this. You got to be better than this. And it's not a dad to be like, man, get off your butt. I demand better than you, be better than me. He didn't have that. And he didn't have the mom that was pushing, but she was there, and so all that stuff, you could see that he was just broken. He was broken. And so he expressed his manhood in a way that wasn't really good. You still get the rewards from it. You get the money, you get the status, you get the power, but it's wrong. It's warped. It's a broken ideal of a man. He still got all the pieces, but instead of building, a monument, is building a gravestone, but it's all the same pieces. It's just misaligned. And so you get fulfilled in feeling like you provide, and you fulfill that people respect you. You fulfill that you're bringing in money. So all this stuff, but it's coming in through the wrong door. And so it's working backwards versus forward, even though it feels like it's forward because you're getting all these things met. It's just not correct. And I think that's the big trick that's on our culture, is that, we are eating fast food and we don't know it. Just because we're still surviving and moving, we take it as working, but it's not working. That's not the long game, you know? And he gets his hope from the scratcher every day. Even though he never wins, he still wastes his money on drinking that's going to help him forget. And then the scratcher for the hope they could get out of that situation. And if you're broken enough, as we have seen, even when you win that $1,000,000, guess where you end up in 2 years? Back in the same place and worse than you were, because you have this idea now that you had this thing that you cannot get back.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
So there is a elevator. So when they went down, what did you think of the situation of what you saw and heard?
Well, I think initially I like the fact that Jamie Foxx kept it like what we would expect from a Jamie Foxx to bring to the character, where it's like that silly kind of like, hey, I'm kind of scared of it, because in all truthfulness, yeah, like I would be kind of the same way. Like I would probably try to mask some of my fear with a little clownishness. But once they got on and they went down there, it seemed like it would be just that simple, that like at the bottom of the real trap house is really just this unassuming, regular, old run-of-the-mill, not you weren't going to go downstairs and find the man. You
Right.
just were going to find the man working for the man who
Right.
works for the man, you know? So it's like, you know, I thought I was like, yeah, this is where the sci-fi begins. But really for them to just reveal a lab,
Yes.
you know, I was just like, that's perfect, because it reminded me of like, you remember how like, I'm gonna get you sucker, like they kind of like revealed the man.
Yeah.
You know, like I kind of liked that it was just a lab, and what they discovered, you know, they discovered some clues while they were there, not knowing that they discovered some clues.
Yeah.
So I thought that part was dope, and the idea that it was a trap house under a trap house.
Right. And while down there, Slick Charles found some stuff he thought was, you know, cocaine, and it wasn't cocaine. We kind of find out later on that it was some special seasoning that they were putting in the chicken that had that interesting commercial, and how that kind of tied together. So I thought it was also interesting too, the lab guy that they found. So he's listening to Michael Jackson breaking it down and stuff, and they kind of, you know, surprise him. And he looks like a, you know, a white dude with like an afro. And I saw that, I'm thinking like, so what's up with the dude, you know? And as we kind of go along, we see the liquor store owner looks the same way, and we see like some other, you know, people, the guy at the manager at the chicken place, you know, got the same kind of do. And at first I was trying to figure out, I'm like, what's up with these white folks, you know, with the afros? And at first I was almost wondering, like, are they trying to say those are supposed to be like Jewish people that kind of, you know, work and do stuff in the community? And that's
you
just...
went Ice Cube with your theory. Nah.
So when I found out what it really was, it was interesting. But I'm wondering if it's a two-sided thing where they're saying one something, but before you get mad, this is really what it was.
Yeah.
You know?
I thought it was interesting. You know, the way I interpreted it first was that it's the culture vulture kind of thing, like your Post Malones, your people who kind of, your Mac Millers, your people who come into our culture, dress themselves the way that they think that we are, but they're really complicit with the oppression of the people that they're stealing from. Like they're just really, hey, while I'm jacking your style, I'm gonna jack your style. Like while I'm harming you. And that was the way I took it at first. But I'm be honest, I'm kind of biased in this way of kind of feeling that way every time I see white people with black hairstyles. So I always kind of feel like, what are we doing here, people? You know. So yeah.
Only reason why I didn't think it was that is because I thought if they were doing that, they would have did a better job at it. That's why I kind of thought it was something else. Because they, you know, now if he would have like the, you know, the shaved hair with the partner, whatever, all that kind of stuff, I would have thought like, you know, but it was just consistently just kind of like, you know, the Afro style. I'm thinking like, okay, and since we know this is not really the 70s necessarily, why do they all kind of got the same look? They keep popping up with this hair thing.
It's indicative of real life though. Like they all kind of whatever the like what you described is it, you know, like they could have done that and been literal, but they kind of still did it. They was like, you know, it's indicative of these white guys who are going to dress them, and white girls who are going to dress themselves up, and they're going to take the best of who we are, who the Kardashians are, like all these different things of like, yeah, like we're gonna, but the factor that they were clones also spoke to the concept of, and one of the reasons why I referenced like a Post Malone or some of these other people, who they all also are reflective of people who come from being poor. And so it's this concept of what is a poor, how does a poor a poor white person, the quote unquote wigger, what I'm saying, like of societies, how they dress themselves up similar to us. But yet they're being cloned too, because they're a part of their cog in the wheel. And it's like the idea that he's like, it's tons of us. Like he gave up that little bit of information I thought was interesting.
Okay, it's interesting that you said the whole wigger thing, because that's kind of how especially Slick Charles was referring to them, when he came across that lab guy. And yeah, he did say there's a lot of us. And so, okay, so to touch on that, I kind of think something else is going on. I don't think that they were cloning white folks, but it
was the evolution.
Yes. So that's probably why he's listening to the Michael Jackson. He's almost kind of like, hey dude, like I'm just trying to, so all that stuff, because they almost used the situation to give a look of something that people would probably respect, even though they didn't earn it. It's almost playing it both ways for the perceived look of it, but then they're putting out their own puppet using their own people. Like, I'm not going to endanger myself like that. I'll just get somebody to impersonate or look like, so they could get the respect and stuff without me having to harm one of mine to do it. But before I dig more into that, their journey kind of leads them on to the church. What do you think of that whole church scene with Lonnie Love, Reverend Lonnie Love?
Yeah, essentially.
I thought it was pretty cool.
I do think it goes into, you can't talk about Black society if you don't talk about what the way that a colonized gospel has ravaged our community and still affects our community. Black evangelicalism that's like expressed through a colonized gospel is one of the most dangerous things that exist. I think all colonized, and when I speak, saying colonized gospel might be deep church conversation, but I base it just to give it a quick reference for someone who doesn't attend church or do church world stuff. So it goes 2 levels deep. American colonized gospel is based off the concept of enslaved individuals. Some enslaved individuals were given the opportunity to preach, and were basically were given a edited Bible. So those few that were allowed to read were given a edited Bible, which was missing 60% of the Old Testament, which has tons of stories of Jewish people being liberated. And then 40% of the New Testament. And the reason why less of the New Testament was amended and wasn't taken out, because it was the concept of Jesus saying, hey, forgive your enemy.
Right.
And so they were given a Bible that had just the liner notes. It didn't have like Exodus at all, because they didn't want them to exit.
Message.
And so like that's one form of colonized gospel that exists within the U.S. standard, which was like, hey, we're not going to teach you to read, but we are going to teach you to say these sayings over and over again. And the ability to preach opposed to teach the actual God. Like, you're really just regurgitating what we're telling you. Right. So slaves, obey your masters. You may not like it. You may be working in the field and you may not like it, but if I tell you to do this, you got to do it. And then you put a biblical reference to it. That's a colonized gospel. Then there's the deeper conversation around what does it mean for like the doctrine of discovery, which goes into like what the Roman Catholic Church did in order to invade Africa and take over multiple nations under this doctrine, under this thing that says you have a God-given right to take other people's land and enslave people. So now, with all that part taken out, every time I see someone huffing and puffing and preaching and it's done in that particular way, I always do process it in that particular way.
I thought it was kind of interesting in what it kind of showed in a slick, kind of quick way. It's almost like how it almost runs the same as a club, because it went from praising and worship to turning into, back that thing up. And it's the same kind of movement, same kind of cadence and all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. And I thought it was very slick and very telling,
Yeah.
the way that how it's very connected, and it's a fine line. It's a fine line. And I also thought it was interesting how the quote unquote drug dealer and the prostitute and the pimp recognized how wrong it was even before the members of the church or the congregation even noticed. So that almost, it says so much. It was so telling.
So much about church culture.
Right.
Yeah.
It was very, it was very
like
powerful.
Kirk Franklin came out with Stomp, and
right. And it wasn't lost on me when I saw that. It said a lot. So this movie did a lot of tagging of situations. And I really appreciate how creative they found ways to say what they needed to say. This is a deep conversation. It's running long. I'll say we'll take a break here. I think this is probably a good spot for us to end it on. Man, like I said, this movie is something, and this conversation with you, we're going there. I rather this way of this deep dive in these little nuances than just to do a regurgitation of what happened, because this is really, the reason why we even consume stuff like this. And so we can have these conversations, so we can work it out. And sometimes it takes conversation to get the true nuance of a thing. So we'll get back together soon. We'll finish this conversation. Thank you for coming through as always. I always appreciate you and your insight. Anything you would like to leave on?
No, I'm looking forward to us getting into the rest of this film, because we haven't really gotten into the ending and some other things. So there's so much more for us to discuss. And I agree with you, man. I prefer deep dives that are contextual, and not just like, I'll watch a Marvel show or movie and come home and watch New Rock Stars, repeat to me everything that I just saw. But the reason why I do that is because sometimes I miss things. Yeah. But I mainly do. Now I like their deep dive.
I appreciate that
because I like for you to discuss fan theories and thoughts. And when you make a movie with social commentary, it's like, it gets deep. So I think that the ending and a lot more things, I think we can get a little bit deeper, and we can get in the, definitely get in the woods on this. So I'm here for it. I'm excited to be, to come back for part 2 of this discussion. Right. Hopefully you love what we're doing here, because we're just giving you ourselves. And this is a peek into what makes a lot of Black men tick.
Fortunate and unfortunately true. All right, man. I appreciate you. And until next time, peace.
Peace.
Peace.